We are speaking with Lorna King today. Lorna is a filmmaker, a screenwriter. How are you?
I am good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, we're speaking in the evening just because the internet seems to be better in the evening from doing these. In the daytime, when I get on this, sometimes it's a bit in and out. So
Yes,
in the evening, it tends
I
to be a
get it. Ugh,
bit
yeah.
better. So yeah, thank you for speaking with me today.
No, no problem.
When did you decide that you want to be a writer?
Oh, I kind of got pushed into actually writing. Well, at first it was a play because I was intimidated by the format of screenwriting because it has to
Sure.
look a specific way, and I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. But I got pushed into it because I got really angry. What it was I was doing work as an extra occasionally, and there was something that was filming that needed like an extra for like 2 weeks of work, which I was like, oh, that would be a great amount of money to earn in such a short amount of time.
Sure.
And then they just kept canceling me, and then they're like, oh, we don't need you at all. And I was like, I
Huh.
was raging. I was like, if I had written this, they couldn't have done that to me.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing that like got me to write. Like it pushed me to just go, like, so it pushed me beyond the point of don't worry about being good, because a lot of people have that where you see people who are already at the peak of their game and you compare yourself as a beginner to that, and that is so disheartening. And I'd had problems with that a lot.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that pushed me to go, no, you can do it. Write something, even if it's bad, and like write it and finish it. And then you can say you wrote something, and then we'll see what goes on from there. So yeah, I wrote a terrible play. I mean, a really, really, really bad play. But that anger like fueled me to write for like 2 straight weeks. I think I wrote like throughout the night. So I was sleeping in the day and writing at night.
Sure.
And then I was like, I've written something. So let me carry on. And then it was after that that I found that there was software that was free that would format screenplays for you, because I'm so much more familiar with film and TV. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And then that's sort of how it built up from there. But it was, I mean, everyone is terrible when you first start doing anything. So, always cut yourself some slack.
Absolutely. I think it's from perhaps people that aren't aspiring filmmakers, or maybe even filmmakers themselves. It's almost like if you're a musician, if you're in a band or whatever, like there's going to be a point where the first rehearsal, you and like your band members get together, you're going to suck, and it's
Yes.
everyone knows that in the beginning you're going to be pretty bad. Yeah, everyone, Rolling Stones, Beatles, whoever, like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like you don't expect them to like get together the first day and then write like 10 hits. So why would a writer or filmmaker be any different? You don't come
Exactly.
fully formed. You have to kind of make the whatever it is the first one, even if 5 years later you look back and go, oh, let's hide that. But
Yeah.
you're still better than all the other people that haven't done it. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. You're actually doing it now. And that's, I think a lot of people really need to give themselves a lot of grace, because they think, especially with maybe sometimes it's older people that are like, oh, well, maybe I'm not so good at this. I'm just gonna stick with my career, even though I'm not really happy and I have this passion for this. Whoever you are, you might as well try it. I mean, we're still living through this pandemic.
Yeah.
Life is short. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if you're bad at something at the start. And I think it's really disheartening because all you ever get is like success stories. And I always make it really clear, like, no, really, everyone is bad at everything when they first start.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's something that I forcefully put out there. Like, just put in the work and you'll get better. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, don't you? Even if you're literally not meant to be a writer, but you
Mm-hmm.
keep persisting, that you're not, even if you never able to find the words that some people find naturally, you're not going to get worse. You're going to get better.
Exactly.
You might not become amazing and regarded as like some of the best three people in the world, if you're just not built that way. Your mind's not built that way,
Yeah,
but you are going to get better. You're going to
exactly.
get more youth used to how it's structured, you're going to be more disciplined, all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And I think, trying something that you think, oh, maybe I want to have a go at this, can open up the other avenues that you might not be aware of. Because it's something that I think about a lot, the way, when you're in school, no one ever goes, oh, the careers advisor is not going to bring in a screenwriter. Oh, hey guys, who wants to get into filmmaking? It doesn't happen. So, a lot of people are really ignorant about the process of film and TV and the kind of jobs that they would actually be quite suited for, like even as crew members, like ADs, grips, gaffers, camera, like anything. And so you never know when you when you dip your toe in something, and it opens doors for something else, you could find what you actually really want to do. So it's just life is trial and error, So I'm trying to embrace that.
No, absolutely, and you have to, and I think you're right to do that. It's also what you mentioned a moment ago about you're angry to do it, which again I relate to, and I get that. Why? Probably one of the reasons why I thought I would start the Film Dimension is because I want to make films myself. I've been involved in some short films, being as a sort of a producer, executive producer. But it's almost like I want to write something myself, and I've attempted it several times and kind of got halfway through and started something else. But I want to direct, mainly because it's like, well, if I'm directing my film, I can't get fired. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Everyone else can go, I'm not working with you anymore because you don't know what you're doing. And maybe they're right. But it will still be my film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I do get that. And I obviously hope, hopefully that, it's never that bad, but people want to do that or want to leave, whatever. But do you think just that because filmmaking, whether you are an actress, actor, director, writer, whatever it is, because it's such a sort of difficult world to get into, and most people never become famous and millionaires and everything else, do you need that kind of that anger, that kind of I'm gonna do this because I have to do this, rather than like, well, I could work on the customer service desk of Tesco, or I could make films, whatever gives you the weekends off, that you just have to have that kind of madness in a way.
Yeah. This is that you've got to be, I mean, I can't say, that for every single person that's made it into the industry, they've all been pushed to that point. But also we have to realize that there's a lot of people in the industry who have some level of privilege. They knew someone who put them where they are, so they might not have that drive. But I think, for people coming in who don't have that, it needs to be this, like, I have to do it. It has to come out of like, I've tried everything else. This is my passion. I have to do it. I think if it's one of those things that like, oh, it'd be a lark, it'll be a laugh.
Yeah.
You might not survive for very long because, this industry is a lot. You have to really fortify yourself to be able to go through it. I mean, even as a writer, I know people who, have kind of quit writing because it's been difficult for them to get feedback, because oftentimes you get feedback from all sorts of angles and none of it is bad, but even just that by itself, you're like, oh God, which one do I pick? What do I do? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I just kind of have been through that as well. It's really, really challenging. So you have to be that one that is like, I'm here because I have this story that I want to tell and I have to. It's just in me and I have to, this is what I'm trying to say. And when you have that, it's harder to kind of quit doing it. It's harder to fall by the wayside doing it, even when it's difficult, because most of the time it's difficult. That's the thing. Like, I feel like people oftentimes will see, celebrities at premieres and things, and that's at the very, very, very end of the whole process. And that's the celebratory end, and that's what people think is, the main thing. No, it isn't. It's like sleepless nights. It's working hours upon hours, refining your craft, working with other people, knowing how to work with other people, working with people who know how to work with you. So it's alchemical. And you oftentimes, like, you make mistakes and you just have to keep going, learn from the mistakes and keep going. But to do all that, you have to have that passion for it. I think otherwise it would just be like, do you know what? It's not for me,
Yeah,
And that's fair, valid.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing, I think it's, I'm trying to think of like people off the top of my head, but it's almost like, you know, you do sometimes, probably every generation or whatever, there's people that come along who are either like the sons or daughters of famous people, or maybe they're like they reach a certain level of fame being from somebody else. They were in a band or like
Yeah.
a pop group, and then they somehow like they're cropped up in a film, like they're in this big budget film. But it's almost like they very rarely do they then go on to have a 20-year career
Yeah.
in films. It's like maybe they're in one film, maybe two, and then they disappear again. And maybe it is because it was kind of handed to them. They're like, oh, you're really famous being a pop star. Do you want to be in this film? And they do it, and they turn up, and they probably get paid like way more than all the other actors.
Yeah.
But they don't go on to make like 20 groundbreaking films, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's like, why is that? What is, because in theory, on paper, they should be. They should be the ones, you know, Madonna's kid, I don't know, Spielberg, all of these people, any celebrity, you would think that all of their children would go on to be the next superstars, the next famous actors or whatever. And I can't really think of any. You know what I mean?
No,
So
it doesn't pass on the way people think it does. And I kind of feel sorry for those kids sometimes, because it's almost like they're expected to. And people are like, oh, but why aren't you like your mom or your dad or like older sibling, uncle, whatever? And I'm just like, it's the same for everyone. You have to find your own path. But it's something that actually brought something to mind. It's a line from Princess Diaries 2, which is a great film. But the line is literally, nepotism belongs in plumbing, not in the arts. That is absolutely true. You can, like, if you've got, you know, like a skill like plumbing or electrician or whatever, you can teach that. Like, I could learn that. Well, I don't know if I could learn that, but theoretically I could learn it. But like, that's something you can teach to other people. You can teach your kids, and they can carry on with your family business, cooking, you know, restaurants and stuff like that. You know, they might decide that that's not what they want to do, and that's also fine. But arts, like, it's it's really rare to see people have that same level of success when they have wildly successful parents in the arts, because it's just not, it doesn't translate the same way. It doesn't happen. So yeah, that's a whole thing. I can go on about that for hours.
Sure. But no, it's interesting, isn't it? And again, it helps, I suppose, refine back to why anyone does it in the first place. You know, why anyone feels that they need to write, they need to come up with stories, they need to pick up a camera, they need to be in front of the camera, or whatever it may be. But in that madness, in that kind of need to do it, hopefully sometimes comes magic, you know?
Yes.
How many, before we get to sort of her Midas Touch and everything else, have you sort of written other screenplays? How did you, because you studied at Edinburgh University, didn't you?
It was at Napier, so yeah, Screen Academy, and that's where I met Amy, because she was doing the MA film program and I was doing the MA screenwriting program. So yeah, it's one of those things, I don't know how I managed to get on the course, because the sample that I gave in was terrible. It was like my very first screenplay ever, so the second thing that I wrote ever, and it was not good. But I asked the lecturers, it was Nigel, good old Nigel Smith. And I was like, how did I get in with the sample? Because I don't know about that. And he said it was obvious that you have something to say. You just need, you know, to learn the craft of how to execute it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fair. Because it was a piece sort of about like racism between people of color. And gosh, it was terrible. I mean, it was really bad. But, you know, that being said, so I have written, you know, other screenplays. I've written, well, I'm not touching it anymore, so that's not going to say I'm done. But I've written a pilot, which was a semi-finalist at an American screenwriting competition, which was super cool. And that pilot was called Deliver Me, and it's a sort of medical, well, the pilot was a medical courtroom drama, but it changes going on, because I've got wee outlines. But it's about like a Scottish midwife who kind of makes a terrible mistake when she finds out her husband is cheating on her. So essentially she's like on her way to work, finds out her husband's cheating on her, and because she was so distracted, and medical staff, you can't just decide you're not going into work because you're emotionally destroyed. You still have to work. So in her state of mind, she made a mistake that killed a patient of hers, and so it's kind of like going through the whole court process and how it could have happened. And my mom's a retired doctor, so I leaned on her a lot for the medical stuff. So it was a lot of research. Every time I had like one question, be like, oh, so would this happen, in a maternity ward? And she would have to literally sit me down for about 2 hours to explain why that may or may not happen, but this first thing has to be explained, and then the other thing has to be explained. Medical knowledge, man, I could not do it. No.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's not easy.
It's really not.
That brings an interesting question up about what's more important, the having something to say, and making it, but maybe you get to make it in limited budget, and you don't have the resources, so you make a independent film with micro budget, but you've got a real story. You're saying something of substance, versus you're not really saying anything, but you've got loads of special effects and there's a plane crash and everything else. From a writing point of view, what's your view on that?
Gosh, I can never come down super hard on someone who has made a film, because it's difficult. Like whether it's micro budget or $1 million or more, it's hard to put something on the screen, and it's, even if it's bad, so much work went into it. So it's hard for me to always be like, ugh, they were lazy, that was terrible. It's hardly ever the case. But for me, it just has to do with what I identify with. Like the stuff that gets me emotionally tends to be something with a message. So it's interesting, actually. I just watched Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, and it's very interesting how different it is to the one in 2017, and how much the one in 2017 for me didn't really have heart. There were lots of questions I had about the narrative itself. The narrative integrity was not really there for me. But it looked really pretty. Like it still fulfilled just part of a need of, oh, there's a big fight, and oh, people are punching each other. Like I have that still in my mind. I still love that sort of thing. But I was still kind of unsatisfied by the earlier one. But this one has all of that, but also narrative integrity with it. And like, it's not perfect, but it's Zack Snyder's vision, but it's very much, it's the stuff that has something to say, whether it's right or wrong. If it has something to say, I want to hear it, but when it's just art for the sake of art, I don't know, it doesn't get me the same way. But also other people can like that, and that's not an issue for me. There's a place for everything. So but for me personally,
it does seem, though, doesn't it, that in the last 10, 15 years, up until super recently, and maybe even we're still seeing like remnants of things coming out now, it does seem that big film, Hollywood, blockbusters, superhero stuff, it's almost like they intentionally wanted to throw out any attempt at sort of storytelling or characterization or developing characters. And it's always strange to me, like, why would they do it? Is it literally because all the statistics show that no, people just want the car chase and the explosions, and they can't possibly take a story, therefore we won't make as many money? I mean, I don't know if you have any insight, but it seems,
honestly, I think about that all the time. And my going theory is that the people with the money don't know how storytelling works. So because they're the ones with the money, they just look at, oh, Marvel has had a great run with this. It's superheroes and it's funny, and it's, it looks a certain way and people are responding. Let's do something like that, rather than interrogating why it works. So honestly, my thinking is, these execs with the money, they need to actually learn how storytelling works, be able to figure out how the mechanics of the story works, so that they can say, okay, this has merit, this might not be for us, but we can say how you can improve it. but there's none of that. And then they wind up fighting with the creatives who know about storytelling because the execs want it to go a certain way because statistics or, you know, what audiences seem to respond to. So honestly, I think that's what it is. The ones with the money aren't necessarily good at storytelling. And yet they will fight with the storytellers rather than just let them do what they're gonna do. So yeah.
It always amazes me that why did they hire these directors in the first place, or these writers, if they're going to just basically ignore them or just ruin their edit in the first place? It's surely they could find someone who just do the job and do what the executives want. It's a strange one, isn't it? But I mean, occasionally something does come through. You know, like the Christopher Nolan Batmans, for example. Were, you know, a long way above a lot of other superhero films at the time, and arguably even after. So yeah, sometimes it gets through, doesn't it? What would you say is your kind of, do you have like a 5-year plan of what you would like to sort of accomplish and where you would get to, or is it literally that there isn't an end point, it's a continuous process?
It's more of a continuous process for me, because really my whole goal is to be a working writer in Scotland, like to be able to pay my bills and save money and get a house. Like I want to be able to live normally from making art. That's literally it. I have no designs on being, I don't know, the next Stephen Moffat, who probably makes millions upon millions every time he makes something. That stuff doesn't matter to me. I just want to be able to live and tell my stories. And that's it. So I suppose, you know, 5 years from now, if that's what I'm doing, I consider myself a success. Just be able to pay my bills, pay my mom's bills. Like that's all I want to do.
And do you think being able to do that from Scotland is a possibility? What's the Scottish sort of scene like? I've asked a few people now, and you know, I'm hearing nothing but good things about the creative people in Scotland, the filmmaking that's going on in there. What's your view? Gosh. You're not tempted to London or Hollywood?
Oh man, honestly, when I started the MA in 2018, and we were really lucky to have amazing guests come in and speak very honestly about the industry. And Scotland is opening up. You know, it's moving a lot quicker, and we're finally sort of getting our act together about having a base, like a studio that things can be filmed at, rather than have non-Scottish productions come in, do their thing, and leave. That doesn't really help Scotland's industry grow. And I know it's not quite where it needs to be just now, but I'm going to be that stubborn person that is like, I do not care. I'm staying in Scotland and I'm writing in Scotland and I'm working in Scotland. It's one of those things. That's the decision that I have made. And it's really important to me that I'm part of raising the profile of filmmaking in Scotland, because God, the talent is here. Everything is here already, and it's a bit like, you know, we're just leaving it to waste because people will go where the money is, people will go where the jobs are, and that's not their fault. But we can actually keep people here. We can set up systems that make sure that people don't fall through the cracks just because they're freelancers. You know, and it's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there quite quickly, I think. So I've made my mind up that I'm going to be one of those people that stays here and make sure it's a thing, and make sure that other people in the arts can know that, oh, I don't have to relocate to London or to Leeds or any of the other regions, because the work is here, you know?
Cool. And it should be, and it only strengthens filmmaking across the whole of the UK, really, doesn't it? If you've got more than just one London base. Absolutely. Do you want to talk about her Midas Touch? Because again, from what I've heard about it and concept, it's is it fair to say very ambitious?
Yes. Yes.
Which I love, because one of the disappointing things for me, and again, yeah, I don't like to criticize other people's work because I don't have a body of work to show yet. But
Yes.
but the one thing that I always find a shame about, certainly about short films, but maybe independent feature films as well, is they don't always have the ambition to do something different or unusual on a big scale. It's all very kind of relationships in one room in a kitchen sort of thing.
Yes.
Which has its place and can be done very, very well and can be funny and everything else. But it's almost like you can do something a bit creative and a bit
Yeah.
different, and it doesn't necessarily cost £1 million to do it, or £10 million, or like the BBC to finance it. So
Yeah.
so yeah,
It's
what's the story?
honestly, yeah, this is the thing. That's part of what I'm saying. The talent is here. Last year, Glasgow Short Film Festival, I have to catch up on this year because I was knee deep in script development. But last year, one of my favorite shorts that came on was called The Motorists. I believe the director is Kieran Lyons.
Okay.
And it's one of those weird ones. I mean, it is fantastic. So like the log line for that short is like, I think it's out like off the festival circuit now, but the log line is like, you know, a motorist, I think he hits someone with his car and then refuses to get out of the car, and then justice takes a strange in this small villagey folksy area, and it is, to me, it's brilliant. I absolutely love it. It's so bizarre, and it doesn't let up. So there are people like that in Scotland. We have directors. I mean, the director of Satanic Panic, I believe that's what it was called, Brian Ferguson, also making super ambitious, weird things that don't just, it's not just kitchen sink stuff that has its place. But I think sometimes that kitchen sink stuff can be a bit of a crutch, because it feels a bit like, oh, well, we're just from this tiny nation. You know, let's just make something to get our names out there and then get out and make a bigger thing. It's oftentimes, especially because shorts tend to be a stepping stone to make longer projects, people kind of just want to get their name out there, and then oftentimes the work will be outside of Scotland anyway, and then they go and make their art elsewhere, and it's just like, it's a creative brain drain essentially. But there are people here who are doing the work. So yeah, I suppose her Midas Touch is ambitious in a few senses, because it's I haven't quite seen anything like it, and then it comes from a very personal place for me. So gosh, I started writing this before I got to Screen Academy actually, but it was late 2017. And the only thing that hasn't changed about it is the title. I don't know, the title just came to me as like a stroke of inspiration, and I was like, oh, I like that. And then I popped it in, and it's changed a lot and it's evolved a lot, you know, as I got better as a writer. So that's what I've been in script development for, gosh, it's been weeks now, it's been a while. But it's very much, you know, it's got this young girl who lives with her grandmother, and she has this power that can take grief away from people, but she absorbs it into herself. So it is detrimental to her, deeply detrimental, because it doesn't just go away. She now has to deal with the grief that she's taken from someone else. And I'm sort of working with the themes of, you know, these people really don't care about the well-being of this girl because she's doing something that benefits them. And it's sort of an indictment of society as a whole. It's like, you know, I can't remember where I was saying this, but it's something that I've been seeing a lot, especially since Brexit was, you know, going to be a thing all those years ago. And it's very much people who mean well, often being like, oh, well, look at this guy, he was a refugee from Turkey, and look at him working in the NHS now as a surgeon. You know, would you really say no to this guy coming in? Refugees are a good thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact is, why couldn't he be an average guy? Could he not just be someone who worked in Tesco? Is he less worthy of being in this country because he's going to work in Tesco rather than be a surgeon? So it's stuff like it people mean well when they say it, but it still comes to, well, they're doing something for us, and that's why it's a good thing that they're here. and it is problematic. So it's one of these things I'm trying to highlight, that really society needs to be looking out for its vulnerable. And people who are marginalized tend to be very vulnerable, especially living, under the Tories, who make sure everyone everyone is vulnerable. Under the Tories, nobody is safe. And I know I try not to talk about politics, but no Tories ever. I cannot stand anyone who calls himself a Tory. I'm sorry, but no. But it's stuff like that, like the whole idea of what are we to the system without our labor? And, if we put ourselves through the ringer thinking maybe the system will accept us if we work for it, what happens if you can no longer do that service? People tend to be discarded. I mean, if you look at like the Windrush generation, a lot of these people tended to be a lot older, not of working age. And the Home Office and their hostile environment destroyed their landing cards, and we're suddenly like, oh, well, there's no proof that you're supposed to be here, so off you go. Like there's no compassion, there's no humanity. And that's the sort of thing that I'm highlighting in this, but I'm using these supernatural elements, and I'm using a specifically Black Scottish family. So I'm trying not to give too much away, but it's very much the struggle of person versus system,
Yeah. Which is kind of a very good theme for film, isn't it? Because it allows you to paint that picture in a very, very clear and provocative way. The other thing that I liked about the concept of it is, I say, all of those things and portraying it in an unusual way, in a kind of probably uncomfortable way as well, maybe. But it's obviously you haven't made it yet, I haven't seen it, but for everything I've looked at your crowdfunder, which was, I only found out about it afterwards. It looked like it was run amazingly, as in like you made more money than you wanted to,
which was great,
which is rare, super rare.
Yes. Oh my God.
So if that's anything to go by, you're gonna do well on the project. It
was stressful, man. I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I having done two crowdfunders myself. Yeah, they're not easy things at all. But it's the interesting thing was based again what I originally said. Yeah, ambitious. It's the fact that you're making, which essentially is a very small budget film, like under it's under £20,000 for the whole thing. By quite a way under £20,000, but it doesn't look like you're compromising like the vision that you've got, and again, I think that it's in a time where people are sort of turning out lots of films, even if it's genre stuff like, oh, this is a horror film, this is a sci-fi film, this is a whatever. It's like, and it's just kind of like the same old sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay, 3 teenagers get lost in a tunnel and there's some kind of creature in the tunnel. And it's like, okay, that has its place, but haven't we seen that? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's a zombie film, or and it's like, come on, you can do better. And again, it's like, this doesn't look like anything else that I can think has been made. But if it was going to be made, it would have been like a Netflix special where they've spent millions of pounds doing this, So I think all of those things together makes a really exciting concept. When are you hoping to do it? You're hoping to do it this year, aren't you? Sort of.
God, yes. Really hoping so. COVID though is, throwing a bit of a spanner in the works there, because the budget really is so small. Like we can't, pay for the COVID stuff out of that, because it would kill the whole budget and we wouldn't be able to put it on the screen.
How does that work? As in, do you have to pay for tests and things? You can't.
Oh yeah, you have to pay for all the testing, and everyone pretty much has to be tested. And I think that's according to the guidelines. And you have to have lots of antibacterial gel on set. It's a whole thing.
They won't provide The government won't provide that if you're doing if you're employing other people, because crew and stuff, they're not supplying.
No, this is the thing. We tried. This is so one of our producers, because we're working with two producers at the moment, Siobhan Fahey, who did My Loneliness Is Killing Me, and Victoria Thomas, who has the longest rap sheet ever for film. And Victoria just did her film with Sharp Short. She just finished shooting not too long ago. And even on the BFI short, they had to get given extra money for the COVID stuff, because even though it's BFI and it's an institution that we know is a British Film Institute, no, the government was not going to be giving tests for people to be on the set, so they had to pay. And I mean, it runs into the thousands of pounds, and even on a small shoot, it's bad.
I could see how it would. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? It's literally you're employing people to do their jobs and to make stuff. We're being told that we go back to sort of normality, even though that will take a long time, if ever. But it's the same time. It's like, well, you're not really helping. It's like, it's crazy, because indie film that has to beg, borrow, and steal to get already can't go, okay, by the way, you've got another £3,000 bill for like tests and things.
It's pretty crazy. I know, it's very, very brutal. So because, at least things are opening up. A lot of people are getting their vaccines and things. So we're really hoping that we can shoot, this year in the summer. Fingers crossed, but it's still COVID dependent. But that's basically why we're having to push it, just so we don't have to pay for all that stuff. But it's been, I mean, the crowdfunder was just incredible. Every time I think about it, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that actually worked, because we had a month to raise like the most ridiculous amount of money. And it was like, well, we'll just try it and do it. Like, I don't know if we'll get it, but we might as well. And, I got hired to work, oddly enough, for NHS Test and Trace for NHS England. So it was a remote job, but I was literally crowdfunding on my phone to the side whilst like working. So it was very, very intense. And it was so amazing for it to actually come to fruition. And then, of course, Giles Torreira was like, oh, hey, I see your thing. That looks super cool. Let me fit 25% of the amount that we needed. And God, you should have seen me. I was sweating so much, because I could, the literal physiological reaction I had, because I couldn't believe it was happening. I was like, it was ridiculous.
See, sometimes dreams do come true. It's right, because that's literally the holy grail for crowdfunders. It's like we just need some celebrity or famous person or some rich person to come along and go, I'll throw a load of cash at you, and it never happens.
I know, this is the thing. Happens. It doesn't happen, and I couldn't believe it did happen. I'm still blown away to this day. But even then, the people that had just given bits of money here and there, because we have just come to the end of the year where everyone was hit with COVID. People don't have jobs. It was also Christmas. So there are people that were still like, oh, I still believe in this project of yours. Let me put in some money here, some money there. And people were really sharing it, and were like, they really believed in it, which was amazing, because I wasn't expecting that at all. It was just me, and Amy, we're going to make our small thing together. And it became a much bigger thing, which is just incredible. And there's people from America who put in hundreds of pounds being like, oh yeah, we quite like this. And I'm like, oh God, what? So I probably wouldn't crowdfund again though. I'm not gonna lie, because it's a lot. But I'm glad it worked, this time.
No, it's gonna be a fabulous film. I think it will be massively well received. I think it will be noticed. I think hopefully you do the festival run and everything else, and it gets its acclaim for that. But it will be one, I'm sure, that people take notice of, and I would love to do updates and post about it when there's a trailer or whatever else.
Thank you.
It'd be amazing. Last question before I go, because it's been really fun, but I appreciate you probably got the stuff to do. is there any time when you first started doing this? I know you're still in the early stages of doing it, and you're going to be doing this for a long time, I'm sure. But knowing what you know now in terms of you've done the crowdfunder, you've had massive success with getting that ready, and you're about to make this. If you could go back to a earlier version of yourself at any time, what would you, even if it's just like a year ago, but what would you tell yourself?
Gosh, even a year ago, things were so different because obviously we had just gotten into lockdown, and I had just graduated at the end of October the year before. So this was just months later. I'm like trying to build myself up, trying to build up my credit essentially, and then everything shut down. And I did not handle lockdown well at all. I mean, I was, oh God, it was pretty bad. So I think I would go back to that version of myself where it's like, well, you've just had your birthday in lockdown, because like lockdown happened right just literally on my birthday. And it was like,
bad.
well,
That's not good.
I know. It was like, well, I guess this is what it is. And there was all this confusion, and God, it's easy to forget how crazy it was because you couldn't get anything for love or money.
Toilet paper and everything else.
Toilet paper. Like it was pretty bad because I was trying to do like an Asda shop, and I'd get like a full shop and 2 things out of the shop would arrive. Everything else would just be unavailable. And I was like, I cannot cope with this. So I was really not in a frame of mind to be creative at all. So I think what I would do is I would go back to that version of myself and go, yeah, I know it really sucks right now. It does, but keep going. Be receptive to people that are like, just keep going, carry on with your work, keep redrafting, come up with new ideas. And I mean, don't push yourself, give yourself some grace, because it was a lot. Psychologically, it was a lot. So give yourself grace, go for walks. Walks are important. And just keep doing you, because the work will be done. And then once things start to open up, things will get better. And I couldn't have predicted the way things went, because I honestly didn't think we'd get sharp shorts. And then we got sharp shorts, and then things just kind of rapidly went into overdrive. And then Amy was like, all right, fine, we didn't get sharp shorts, let's crowdfund. And I was like, all right, girl, I guess. And it just, things moved a lot quicker than I ever thought it would, in a good way. So yeah, definitely that's what I'd say to my past self. Be patient with yourself, but keep going. Keep that fire burning, like the great Beverly Knight says.
I mean, that's really powerful stuff, and that's really wise words, isn't it? And you're right. It's because literally it's like a year from now, things can be so different. And it's probably quite important to keep that in mind, isn't it?
Because I know a lot.
Anytime, but
exactly, because people have been struggling, and having spoken to a few people that are kind of like, well, I don't know about screenwriting anymore, because that lockdown really did a number on all of us creative folk. So I definitely, for creatives out there, things are getting better. Get into the swing of things. Hit me up on Twitter if you want, because I've been talking to a few other writers and things who are kind of coming up, and they're like, oh, can we have a chat? And I'm like, yeah, let's have a wee Zoom call and just chat. So I love being able to do that. People are finally realizing that the filmmaking and TV industry is not impossible to get into. It's something that is feasible for them to do now, which I didn't think before I went to Screen Academy. So it's I'm trying to pass it forward, pay it forward, basically.
Yeah, you have to, and it's brilliant that you are.
Oh yeah.
Where can people find you online? What's your Twitter account?
My Twitter is @Lorna_King. And I'm really best to be found on Twitter, because I do have an Instagram, which is Lorny Rules, because that was my Bebo name and everything else on Instagram was taken. But I don't use Instagram an awful lot, so Twitter is really the best place to find me.
Sure. I will put the link up and everything.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.